Go, let me know when you're ready to start sharing my screen. Okay.
So I'm going to say hello and welcome. Thank you, Brian. This is September. Oh my gosh, I said September already. This is August 7th. We're back to school August 7th with Brian Marcantel, here to do a CalPads and special ed clerk training. So Brian, thank you so much. So appreciate you being here today.
You're very welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for having me today. Again, I'm Brian Marcantel, Vice President of SIRAS Systems. Thanks for joining me today. For those who want to follow along, I have a PowerPoint that will probably get updated a little more, but in the meantime, uh, it's right here. Where's I'm trying to find my Zoom links can you see my screen? Are you seeing my,
It's really tiny, and it looks like you need to be in slideshow mode.
let's see, stop share. Well, okay, so I'm sharing the screen too, and yeah, I know it's tiny, but let me zoom
There,
in.
there we go. We see your Padlet now.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure what was going on there. Um, oh, okay, kidding me. So there. Okay, it looks like with your Zoom, Jennifer, I don't have the ability to share a little blinky highlight. But on the right-hand side under Zoom Agenda Materials, the 2024 fall updates on right here in the middle there. If you click on this one, you can get access to what I'm going to present now. This PowerPoint. So this is kind of what we're going to go over today. Due dates, our help area, introduce the new version of that. And I'll focus in on a couple areas for that. There's an admin calendar, which is useful. I have an update about the TOMS API. And then we'll go into the major updates that CDE has been talking about with eligibility updates for disability and DRDP. A little reminder on the annual determination letters and what you can do in SIRAS to help with that. And some the last year's initials that we're starting this year that we need to make active. I'll go over that in the context of why we only hopefully have to do that one time this year. And then reminder about plan adoptions. And then I know degree of support was a concern. And then there was some significant changes to the meeting delay reasons and non-participation reasons, and I'll go over that as well. So these are suggested due dates. And so our fall one is going to be on, let's see, I think, oh, there we go. I got PowerPoint does this for me. So fall one is going to be on October 2nd. So leading up to this, you can run data discrepancies. And then once we hit fall of October 2nd, I believe they'll have the snapshots ready by that day, if not earlier, but then you can start checking certification errors. Obviously, we want to be checking and clearing errors. But as of today, we are early in the year. It's August 7th. We still haven't finished the EOY4 amendment window, so we aren't going to be sending any data for fall one until probably maybe the third week of August. We actually have some updates to do that I'll go over in the meeting delay reasons. But so if you're sending data now, the only real reason to send it is because you're trying to fix something in the end of year 4 amendment window. Other than that, there's no reason to send data at this time. But these deadlines are good to know. We suggest that you have all your errors and warnings cleared in SIRAS by November 4th, and look to set your LA approval hopefully by no later than November 22nd, and then maybe look to scheduling a SELPA meeting shortly after that.
Brian, can you drop that link to your Padlet that has this presentation in the
Oh, of course.
chat, if you don't mind?
Good idea. Let me copy that, and
Yeah.
then if I can put it in the chat. There you go. Should have done that earlier. Thanks for
Perfect. Thank you so
reminding me.
much.
Okay. Okay. So this is we have our SIRAS help area. There's support for providers, support for SEDS coordinators. Those are supposed to be hot linked. It looks like I didn't get them linked right now. But if you go to back on the this page right here, this support center SEDS coordinator, let me put this in the chat for you. And you can go there. This is being under continual updates. We will be updating it. But notice that if you go to the user manual for SIRAS, and you can get to that from being within SIRAS, there is the user manual, which is still being updated. We have an older version you can download, but it's not very updated. But then there's a support link here. There's SIRAS alerts if there's any known issues coming up. We have some information about that here. But for the purpose of today's call, that we're going to be going on SEDS coordinators. But just so you know, we do have for providers, this page, there's a lot of information that the IEP team can get help from. We're going to focus a lot on the SEDS coordinators and the links that are in here right now. So that's what these two links are. And then the SEDS coordinator getting started. This is a page that is, it's a narrative here, and it's got a lot of hyperlinks and whatnot. So for those who are brand new, you can start looking at this. This is an older page. I've got some links in it, but in the next week or two, I'm going to make this a lot more relevant and more updated. Feel free to send us email suggestions about, hey, I was at this page and I thought I would find this, but I didn't. And then that we can course correct on that. There is something called SPED focus by months right there. We are now in August. And so when you click on a link, it actually has a list of things that we're going to do. It's got deadlines. It knows this is going to be your annual determination data poll on August 20th. I'll go over that in a little bit. But this is a list of things that you should be familiar with or already done with or working on. And just going back, that is, and then these go out throughout the year. These are older ones, and these will get updated. So if you click on older ones, they're probably from last year, but we'll be going through and updating these. So hopefully you'll find some use in that. There's also the SPED procedures. This one is, we're trying to make it useful for like, hey, what to do when new or returning students move into your district, or what do we do when students exit or leave, or hey, there's an initial evaluation we need to get ready for. So these links here should help talk about what's going on with it. And so if you're brand new, some of these links may be a little daunting or confusing at the outset. So we're trying to, have trainings like this where we go into them in more detail. I will be having some other trainings and doing my office hours where I will actually have, PowerPoints devoted on how we can make use of these. Right now, these are kind of in their beginning stages. This one's a little, I've got some things like when students arrive, they're in different situations, moved and known to be continuing with you. This is when, hey, the student just transferred your high school district. You just got an 8th grader moved into your district as a 9th grader, and we know they're going to start participating. Well, we need to do those plan adoptions. But there might be situations where a student newly or moves into your district, and maybe they go to a private school, maybe they go to the public school, but for whatever reason, they're eligible, but they're not going to start participating. Well, this tells you that what we need to do is we need to make them inactive in SIRAS and report the fact that they're not going to be participating. So this could be a whole nother presentation as well. For today's presentation, I'm going to stop there. We can actually, we should have time for questions later on. We can go over that. But there's also the SIRAS admin calendar. So if you're looking to know, like, hey, when did the integrations turn off or turn on? Well, like right here. So on June 8th, we turned off all the integrations for like Aries or Power School or whatnot. And then we turned them back on August 1st. We actually talking about the training database refresh is going to happen later this month. And it talks, some terms like that. And then we got to plan adoption. So this link right here, if you go to the plan adoption, this talks about how, you can use the plan adoption required button to find them. And then graphically speaking, if you have a student record that is new to your district and you've made them active, and there isn't an archive from your district yet. In fact, what you see is the most recent archive is from a different district. And if you know they've enrolled and started participating, well, that's a good bet that we need to click that archive for reporting to make that plan adoption. There's also a link in here for district enrollment date. And I want to just spend a brief moment on this, is that when you see the district enrollment date in SIRAS, it isn't always going to align. In most cases, it will for continuing and returning students. It can align with the district enrollment date for the beginning of the year. But the assumption is that the student is already eligible participating on this date. So if we have students who are in preschool or any grade really, and they're being referred and not currently eligible, we don't need to enter a district enrollment date into SIRAS at that point. But for the consideration of students who are already enrolled in your district and they arrived and they started participating and they're brand new, then it would be important to use that district enrollment date when you're doing your plan adoption. And then there's some other clarifications on that as well. I won't go into those because out of context, it won't really make a lot of sense at this point. Okay, so we talked about the SIRAS admin calendar. Just a review. SIRAS integrations were turned off on June 8th. They're back on now. And then the training database refresh. And then there's the after rollover instructions, which hopefully most people are already well aware of that. If not, you can find that link in there. If you want to search for things in our help document, I look for after rollover because there was a link, but if I just search for it, we can get some documents. And oh, here's the one I was looking for, after rollover help. So this has got information for you, and I can put this in the chat as well, because that might be helpful for some of the districts that are here. I see there's some messages going on. Jennifer, I'll let you run interference on that. Probably want to save questions until the end. And it looks like we're fine there. Okay. Okay, so let's keep going here. Tom's update. So for those who are new to SIRAS, let me encapsulate this. In SIRAS, when people are doing their IEPs, there are accommodations forms. And when staff fill out the accommodations, they're entered into SIRAS in a way where traditionally what would happen is staff site coordinators would go find all the TOMS accommodations for SBAC, and they would find all the accommodations for LPAC. And in fact, if you go to this link, it'll give you instructions for that right there. But you would download basically a batch file of all the accommodations for the year or what have been updated so far, and then you batch upload them into TOMS. Well, TOMS is trying to get away from that paradigm. They really want to have the SEDS systems in real time sending accommodations over as they are updated. So as you have meetings throughout the year, and if you're updating the accommodations, we're encouraging you to enter the accommodations into your credentials here. Let me look for the TOMS API. I'll show you the what it looks like here. So if you find the SIRAS API for TOMS, you can go here to the tools, SIRAS admin, and then in this page here, you have the ability to enter your API username and TOMS API secret key. Now, the important point is that your SIS most likely already has this information entered in because your SIS will be sending accommodations for general ed students like Bio 04. So if you already have these credentials, you can just enter them into SIRAS. And then when meetings are finalized, the accommodations, assuming that the parent accepts the plan, of course, that were proposed in the meeting, will get updated in the interface. And then after you finalize the meeting, they'll get automatically pushed. So if your district wants to start using this, we highly suggest that you have your site coordinators work closely with you so that when the first meetings this year are starting to get finalized, look into TOMS and see if the accommodations that were in the meeting are now showing up in TOMS the way you would expect. And hopefully they are. We did some extensive testing with it. It seems to be working pretty well. But if you have any concerns or questions about that, obviously this is still optional, but we are encouraging its use because we think it'll be a very useful feature. And again, I know there's a lot I'm covering here, but we'll do questions at the end here. Okay, so eligibility updates. Well, thanks to AB 2173, the Reducing Stigma in Education Act, it was passed this year. We're no longer referring to ED as emotional disturbance. It's been changed to emotional disability, and we've already made the changes in SIRAS, and so we wholly support this change. I think it's a better use of terminology moving forward for the kiddos. Now on to DRDP. DRDP has taken a significant shift in that any kiddos, regardless of their grade, up to TK, as long as they're 5 and have a signed IEP as of the cutoff date, in this case it's November 1st, they're eligible for DRDP, with the exception There's always the exception, but if they turn 6 at any point during the school year, then they're not required. Um, for right now, I think we're going to be including all the requirements of these ages, even if they include 6. But I can tell you, we'll be reaching out to SELPAs this year to see if there's any preferences on leaving the 6-year-olds in there just in case, instead of just outright leaving them out. Because if you have a student who turns 6 on literally June 15th after school's gone, it doesn't really make sense to leave them out, but technically speaking, it's not required to do that. So anyways, just know that once the DRDP is online again, after we do our updates in the next 2 weeks or so, you're going to see a lot more students who are eligible for DRDP, and this is why. Annual determination letters. So in this PowerPoint, this link will actually take you to a page in here. If I wanted to search for it, if I search for annual determination, this is the hot mess of a page. It's still not quite done yet. But basically, what I'm encouraging you to do is to watch this video that Dominic from CDE put into place. And basically, he's going to show you a couple of things. But if you look at the CDE office hours thing, is what they're trying to find is like a specific set of students. And what those are students where they were enrolled with your district as of fall 1 last year, 2023. That's October 4th, 2023. That's what this date right here for us. And so, but we want to find who of those students who are actually overdue in CalPads as of the first poll on 2/13/2024. So the video that I linked to on this page right here, this page will show you how you can go into CalPads and run the 16.21 report twice. Once as of October 4th, 2023, once again as of February 13th, 2024. And this video will show you how to take these two lists and then use a VLOOKUP and put them together and find just the specific records that were they were enrolled on 10/4/2023, because when you run the list as of February 13th, 2024, you might find students that only arrived at your district in January of this year, which we're not concerned about those. So we want to take the list of students that were overdue as of the 2/13/2024, VLOOKUP with these kiddos and see which ones have overdue plan reviews or overdue reevaluations as of this date. So then this is going to give you a smaller list of SSIDs. And what I'm suggesting that you do is you take that same SSIDs under consideration and then you upload them into SIRAS. And I'll have some screenshots down here. And then when you upload those into SIRAS, and I'm actually going to have a whole PowerPoint on this later on. But basically, you're going to find those records in SIRAS, and then you're going to want to double check, are any of them going to be enrolled on 8/20? And are they going to still be overdue on 8/20? If so, that's going to be a list for the director to explain to CDE. If the students look like they would be overdue on August 20th, but you know they're not enrolling this year, but they're still active in SIRAS when they shouldn't be darn sure you get these records made inactive in SIRAS, and more importantly, in CalPads to show that they're not enrolled as of a date, because otherwise it will falsely look like they were overdue at your district when they shouldn't be. So that's kind of a big thing. I'm going to stop there. There's too many questions we can do on this. This, I think, will be better suited for a specific office hour time. I do want to get into the last year's initials starting this year, because I don't think we have to do this again, hopefully next year, because there was a limitation last year where when you had an initial IEP where the student was found eligible, let's say May of 24, but the plan effective date wasn't going to be until now, August or September of 2024, in the next academic year. CalPads didn't have us, SIRAS could do it. CalPads wouldn't allow us to send future dates for status and or plans. So we had to really just report the meetings as they were as of June 30th, which was eligible, no IEP, other reason. The other reason being, because they're starting services in the next academic year. So hopefully this is a one-time deal, but it really depends on how CalPads deals with future dates. But for the meantime, if you go into your predefined queries, there's a button called recent initials, eligible, not participating. And you run those those buttons. And if you confirm that they've started, update the district enrollment date, and then you're going to want to click the button that says, go ahead and update them. I think I have some screenshots in here. If I go look for recent initials, actually I don't have it queued up here. And what comes up? Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's that button right there, and I put some more things. So here's where you'd want to look and see, oh, the plan effective date's in August, but we have this weird older district enrollment date, so you might get an error if you're trying to do it. So just make sure that the district enrollment date is in alignment with the plan effective date, assuming the plan effective date's accurate. If this plan effective date's not accurate, don't reactivate the meeting. You can just go into the archive and fix it. But once the plan effective date and the district enrollment date are in alignment, and again, it might be that the student started general ed on August 15th, but they didn't start their plan until September 1st. Well, then it's okay to have the plan effective date of September 1st and the district enrollment date of September 1st, because that's when they're enrolled and on special ed. I know it's a little confusing, but we're using these district enrollment dates to set SPED's effective dates, and that's a little more down the road. But when you are using this button here, recent initials eligible not participating, this also could apply to kiddos in a preschool district where within the last year or two, they were found eligible in preschool and they didn't want to start, and now they're in kindergarten, and you want to remind the team that, hey, they're in kindergarten, they're still eligible, and maybe the IEP team wants to reach out to the parents again and see if they're wanting to start now that they're in kindergarten, no longer in preschool. So this button can have a couple different uses. But what you'll see is that for the ones where we know they're coming back this year, once you click this button right here, you'll get this confirm, and then what you're going to do is that you'll say, let's assume that the dates were aligned. It's going to make it, you're not going to see a new archive though. What you're going to see is that the archive gets converted from being eligible no IEP plan to eligible and participating. And even though the meeting date's still old, it's going to know from your district enrollment date as to when, which is going to be in alignment with the plan effective date, because there are some times when the plan effective date and the SWID's effective date may not be in the alignment that we want. That's another story. But this is going to basically not create a new record, but it will see it turns blue. And what that means is that SIRAS is now going to send the new SWIDs as of your district enrollment date saying, hey, they're now eligible and participating as of the day they started the plan. So that most likely will align with the first day of school. But if there was some delay, based on maybe they didn't start right away and maybe staff wanted to have another review, then you wouldn't have to do this, because if you'd made the record active and then when you finalize the other review, then there'd be a secondary record here that was active, and that would automatically report the SWIDs. So long story short, we're trying to make it so that SIRAS automates most things for you, including sending SWID status. So all the steps of what's happening in the real world are all done in your SIRAS in your district. It should work pretty seamlessly. Where it gets a little complicated is if, let's say, you're onboarding a student who maybe had initial initial evaluation at a different district that maybe wasn't even in SIRAS, and SIRAS doesn't have any history, then you may want to work with me on making sure that we can build the history in SIRAS, or at least send the correct building blocks to CalPads to show what happened to your district, to the student when they got to your district. Because if a SIRAS doesn't have the whole story here from what's in CalPads, SIRAS can't automatically do things like that. But anyways, okay, so this is definitely a task that we'll be doing this year. Planet options, again, this is, I can't emphasize this enough. This is something we'll be basically monitoring in the entire year. And the cool thing is that the painful analysis from doing SSID extracts, we don't have to do anymore. They're suggesting, although if you have your internal processes where somebody's evaluating SSID extracts internally, and you have a method going, by all means continue that if it's working for you. If you're one of the districts where getting SSID extracts are a little difficult, or you don't have access to it, minimally you should have the access to CalPads as a SEDS coordinator. And in fact, all district SEDS coordinators in SIRAS should have minimally read-only access to CalPads, even if you're not allowed to send the data because the CalPads person has to send it. Because then you can run the 16.21 reports And then when you're looking at this list, the 16.21 list in CalPads, if you see student records on there that don't have your district, they have some other SELPA, some other district, then you know that you need to do a planned option for them. And if you can't even find them in SIRAS, then that means that the student has enrolled in your district. Maybe the parents told you that they're on IEP, or the district enrollment process, they told that they're on IEP or not, doesn't, may or may not happen. The thing is that you in the district office who uses SIRAS didn't know that, and so now you've got to go find this record and then do either a request transfer or create a new record to be able to at least get the plan that the student came in on, that because CalPads believes that the student's eligible, because if they're going to show on a 1621 port, they have to be eligible. So you need to do some investigation. Maybe they showed up eligible, and then the parents said when they enrolled, hey, we're actually withdrawing, right? Well, that's the kind of information that needs to go to the SEDS coordinator. So when you see these records in your 1621 that you're looking to maybe do a plan adoption for, we're gonna have to just double check that they did start participating, because if they arrived at your district eligible, but they're not gonna start participating, well, then we don't do a plan adoption. In that case, that was that arrived eligible but immediately stopped services. That's where we would, make the record inactive. But the key point is that even if they're gonna participate or not, they showed up in your district, they're already eligible for IEP. We want to have a copy of that plan in place in SIRAS so that the IEP team can review it, and um, that because it may inform them as to whether or not they want to refer the student for another initial evaluation if the parents withdraw them immediately upon enrolling, or whatever the case is. But the thing is, we want to have that information available for the IEP team, regardless of what happens with the participation. Now, degree of support is causing a little bit of anxiety, or I should say a lot of anxiety. But one of the important things, and we do have a link for the CDE's FAQ here, and then we also have a help page in SIRAS for it. I believe this will link to it. But the key point here is that every LEA should determine which staff are responsible for identifying the student degree of support. We've got the entire district, or the entire academic year, 24-25, to get them filled in. But what we don't want is staff who know that it has to be filled in and then just start filling it in regardless because it has to be filled in, whether it's accurate or not. We really don't want that, because if people are filling it in without consideration if it's accurate, that's going to have some real world consequences in later down the road. So if there's any doubt, just leave it blank until. So if you're a SPEDS person and you know that this has to be filled in and you haven't gotten any guidance from your district yet on how to fill it in, leave it blank. It might be that you guys want a general user to be able to fill it in because they're the expert, and maybe they can't fill it in because they can't unlock records. Well, that's a great reason to email support at SIRAS Systems. Say, hey, how can we let this general user be able to enter the degree of support? Well, the easy answer would be to make them like a district admin 2 or district admin 1 potentially, where they can unlock records. So there's a lot of solutions that we can offer depending on the problems that are coming up. But I just really want to emphasize that this is a fact-finding thing for CalPads. There's no punitive issues in it this year, but obviously where it's going is that they're looking to try to identify, when students have more, extensive needs, is it, do they have a certificated staff on site? But the thing is that, it might be that your district doesn't have anybody within the district who's certificated, but you might be, contracting with NPA or contracting with the county, and that's going to be documented in the IEP, but CalPads might not see it in your SIS data at all, or whatever the staff data is that goes to CalPads. So there's a lot of hurdles before this data being put into SIRAS equals instant out of compliance for your district. This is a longer plan towards helping districts, helping CDE help districts that need the extra help. So it's not about, so my take is that they're just trying to get more information so they can help customize interventions for districts where, it's like, hey, you've got tons and tons of these extensive needs, but we realize you guys are understaffed. Let's figure something out. I'm hoping that that's kind of where CDE is trying to go with this, but Okay, we're kind of getting through the gist of it. I just as a summary, the meeting delay reason 75 temporary school emergency, or I believe has been merged into 60, which is I should put the labels here, but let me scroll back. But basically, these two have been merged. Um, and the delay 10 and 20. I have the names in a second here. I will show you them. Meeting delayers in 10 and 20 have new clarified labels. When you see them, you'll be happy about that. And pretty much almost all the delay reasons do have updated definitions here. So, and then on the non-participation summary side, CalPADS has added a new reason called 27. This is for initials only where the parents didn't agree to eligibility. This basically is a new outcome from the initial, because normally when you finalize an initial, there's three outcomes. There has been three outcomes that we recognize. One, they didn't qualify. Two, they did qualify. And three, they did qualify, but they're not starting. So that not starting part actually has two non-participation reasons. One, they're not starting because the parents have declined FAPE, or two, they're not starting due to other reasons. Typically, they're starting the future start date, like all the last year's initials, where we finalize them as eligible, no plan, other reason. The other reason being because they're not starting this year, they're starting next year. What you're going to see is that if somebody finalizes an initial evaluation and the parents don't accept the plan, there's going to be an option. And let's say the student was found eligible. There'll be two options now. One will be eligible, not participating due to parents declining FAPE. Or if they've indicated they don't accept the plan, it might be that they're not agreeing to the eligibility at all. And if that's the case, the staff will need to know to indicate that the parents didn't agree to the eligibility. And that's going to tell SIRAS to report this record to CalPADS as not eligible. So even though your staff found the student eligible, if the parents don't accept the initial provision of eligibility, we have to report that as not eligible. So the documentation will still state that the student was found eligible, but you'll see clearly that there's a disagreement in the plan. And if you look in CalPEDS later, it'll show that the student's not eligible. Now, the two other big changes, really it was four of them here, but is that SIRAS had we had this reason called 24 of not eligible. Right? And that was typically parent withdrawal. But when it came down to it, we also know that there's another type of not participating, and that's what we now call cessation of services, formerly known as PWN, exit to private school. And SIRAS, we couldn't in good faith combine those two because those are two separate situations. So even though we could only report them as 24 to CalPADS, we kept them separate in SIRAS, one as 24 and the other one as 24.1. CalPADS now has agreed with us, our stance on that, and they have updated it. So now that if you say parent withdrawal, parent or self-withdrawal, or now it's not eligible, written revocation of eligibility, we will report it as a non-participation reason 28, which then means that they are not eligible. However, if the non-participation reason is what we used to know as PWN, exit to private school, now it's called cessation of services, where we report that as they are eligible, they're just not participating. So that's the nice thing about the new way that we are reporting data to CalPADS, is that we can report four components of an IEP plan. The first component is, or an IEP determination, I should say. First component is the status, right? Are they eligible? Are they not eligible? The next component is participation. Are they participating or are they not participating? Then the third component is the plan itself. That's, the eligibility, the program setting, percent in gen ed. And then the fourth component are the services. And the services, as you know, are also go hand in hand with the plan. So any student who is considered eligible and participating should have a SWID status of 1 in CalPADS. They should have at least the most recent meeting, and then they should have plans and services. But when we get to the point where they either are withdrawing or a cessation of services, and this is going to send a SWIDS 2 of eligible not participating if they're if they're no longer participating. It's going to set a SWIDS 4 of not eligible, but non-participation reason 28 if they are withdrawing. So in either case, if we're indicating that they're not participating, we don't expect to see plans. So later on, we're seeing these errors in CalPads about, missing eligible and participation status for a plan. If there was any confusion about how a record is getting made inactive, or if an extra record gets created while they're active and then we inactivate them, it's possible that a plan could get set up that's dated after they stop participating. And if we tell CalPads that, hey, they're on this plan from this date, but that date's after we already said, hey, they're not participating because, or they're not eligible anymore, that's going to be an error, right? And then the other non-participation thing that was big is the R21, which is the not eligible based on a D and Q. The 24 was based on they'd already started participating and they're indicated as not eligible or not participating after starting. The 21 was specifically for when you had an initial evaluation and they're initially found not eligible and they'd never started participating with you. But the thing is that we also know that staff can exit a student or say that they're not eligible or really no longer eligible due to a triennial. So CalPads put us in a quandary because we have these two situations that we could not merge, but CalPads didn't recognize they were two separate. So that's why we had that non-participation reason 21. And then we had the non-participation reason of 21.1, which now CalPads recognize is a valid different separate reasons. So now they're agreeing with us on both of these, right? Which I think is great. So the thing is that these don't change anything about how you're doing your business in SIRAS. You still are going to, if a student is in your district and then they're going to stop participating, or you have an initial and they're found D and Q, or you have a triennial and they're found no longer eligible, we're just going to report the new codes for you automatically. You don't have to do anything really different. The only thing that's a call to action is we need to make sure that the IEP team, when they're having their initial evaluations, if they were trying to finalize an initial where the parents don't accept the plan, that they may need to distinguish between are they just declining FAPE or are they declining the eligibility altogether? So that's the one takeaway from this non-participation thing is they have to make that determination. And so on this document right here, I'm just showing you where you can look up the actual source of the information I'm showing you. Right now, version 16 that I have is incomplete. It hasn't been released to the public yet. As if you go to this page right here, you'll still see that the code sets 15 are still in place from last May. CalPads is in the middle of updating these things. So these are all just hot off the press, and these definitions may change a little bit. But I just want to go over some of these briefly that I talked about earlier. So this is the meeting delay reason 10, right? It used to be parent refused to consent. They've changed the label to be delay in parental consent. So this is only applicable for initial evaluations. So if the meeting is going over 60 days, or potentially the third birthday timeline, because as you know, if you have an initial evaluation for a Part B student who's not an infant or not an IFSP, once you send the assessment plan out, once it gets signed with parental permission to assess, that sets it's the assessment plan received sign date. That sets our parental consent date in SIRAS. That also sets a clock ticking of 60 days. So CalPads is going to be looking, and this is an indicator compliance. This is DINC 3 or DINC 2. But basically, and this is also going to be hopefully in the 16.21 report, maybe later on this year. Right now, the only way to look at these is in SIRAS using our DINC reports. But the thing is, if it goes over 60 days, it's late regardless, but the meeting delay reasons are what can make it compliant. So if you have staff where You have an initial Part B, and let's say that the parent consent was received at the end of June, but you can't have the meeting until August when you come back for school. Well, easily you're not going to use, 10, you'll use 40 for school break, right? But it's still showing as overdue in CalPads. You just want to make sure that the reason, that's why these meeting delay reasons are so important, is that if you have records that are showing up as overdue in CalPads, first thing to check, are they really overdue? Because if they're not really overdue, it might be there's missing data. Or in the case of an initial evaluation, let's say you have a meeting in the middle of the year and you have your first meeting, it's within 60 days. But let's say that you need to continue the meeting. Well, it might be that there's a well-meaning staff person who goes, oh, we're continuing the meeting, I need to change the meeting date. And then they change the meeting date away from the original meeting date that was within the 60-day timeline. But now the continued meeting date being a month later now puts you outside of the meeting date timeline, 60 days. So when you're reviewing your meeting delay reasons for initials, and you go, wait, and you're looking at them, you're going to want to just double check meetings that are showing as late when you think that maybe they really aren't late, because there might be a data entry problem. Or it might be that, let's say a student arrives in your district and you do an annual right away and you know it was on time, but CalPADS is saying it's overdue. It might be that CalPADS does not have the last IEP that SIRAS knows and which made it so that when you had the annual, as soon as they got to your district, being compliant. So if you're seeing a need to add a meeting delay reason for a meeting you know is not overdue, it might be there's missing information. That's when you can reach out to support at SIRAS Systems and we can take a look. So in this case, instead of adding a meeting delay reason for a meeting where the meeting date was changed, the real solution is to go back and fix the meeting date of that initial that was changed away from the correct meeting date. And that's going to be a little bit of an extensive change, but if you reach out to us, we can help you fix that and get it reported correctly. So just be cautious when you're reviewing your meeting delay reasons, because if you know it was overdue and there's a good documented reason, great. But if you question whether or not it's overdue, it might be there's missing information somewhere, or just wrong data somewhere. So the other main change that they had that I was happy to see was the label of parent didn't make child available. This one's available for all the different meetings. Now notice it says all meetings, right? Notice that there's no mention of other review. No mention of 30-day review, no mention of exit summary. Because as far as CalPAD's concerned, those are not meetings. CalPADS only considers initials, plan reviews, and reevaluations as full meetings. Now, you may be thinking, just Brian, you said 30-day. Why is that not mentioned here? Well, a 30-day, technically speaking, can be a plan amendment, or you're adopting the plan because you're adopting the out-of-self IEP, or it could be a full annual review. But it's really important that the staff indicate right from the beginning when they're selecting a 30-day review as a plan review, because then we'll report it as a plan review to CalPADS, even though it's labeled in SIRAS as a 30-day. So this is another thing where if you're seeing that there are records that are overdue in CalPADS, and you're like, wait, I know we did the annual, and you see the annual's done, and you see the meeting done in SIRAS, but it turns out to be an other review with a secondary purpose of annual. Well, unfortunately, if the meeting is being chosen as other review, even though they're intending to do it as a plan review or an annual plan review, if SIRAS isn't told from the beginning that it's an annual review and it's told from the beginning it's an other review, that will not report a plan review date. And so if that happens, reach out to us. And typically the solution for when the wrong meeting type is that we'll say there's two options. The really long and messy one is to reactivate the meeting. We really don't suggest that. Now, if it's a contested case and you want to fix and get all new signatures and go through go all 9 yards to get this thing going, you can do that. It's a mess. Typically the easiest solution is to hold a quick amendment where somebody goes into the notes page and affirms and attests and says, hey, this meeting event that we called another review in SIRAS on this date, we really intended it and we did it as a plan review, and just basically labeled that. And once we get that little bit of acknowledgement in an amendment to it, let us know, and we can show you how you can go to the MI summary page, and within a couple of minutes, we can fix the last IEP date, and we can create an archive or fix the archive, and then be able to send the plan review that didn't get sent because the wrong meeting type was changed. And then what you'll know is that then on your 16.21 report, it's going to drop off as an overdue plan review, and you don't need a meeting delay reason for a meeting that wasn't late. Okay, parent contact not attend, it's got an updated definition a little bit. School break, that's pretty much the same. The transfer, this has an updated definition, pretty much the same. Okay, this is 60. This is the one where I said there's merge. Okay, so the school emergency has been merged with 75, so it's now called school emergency or temporary school closure. That's what I couldn't remember. But yes, you won't see 75 of temporary school closure by itself anymore. Reason 60 is going to have both of those in there. I don't know if anybody felt that earthquake last night, but it was pretty powerful. But I don't think it was enough to close anything down. But who knows? Wait, I don't want to jinx anything here. Okay, so 70, that's student emergency. This is still the same. 75, this has been retired. I believe we've removed it, or we will remove it out of SIRAS soon. 80 is due process. This is where timelines are messed up because you're just having to deal with a lot of extra coordination and negotiation. And then there's the did not pass hearings, about the same. And then late without cause. Hopefully we don't need to use these, but I can tell you if you have a meeting that was done late and you don't have a documented reason for it, and there really isn't a reason, it's much better to fill in the meeting delay reason of 90 late without cause, because then at least CalPADS or your FMTA, if you're working with a FMTA, looks at it and says, oh, they're aware it was overdue and they've acknowledged that. Because if you don't put a meeting delay reason in, the implication could be that your district's not even aware it was overdue, which you probably are, but it doesn't look that way because it hasn't been tended to by having a meeting delay reason put in place. So for any records that you're certifying on for any account, especially for fall one, because this goes to the dashboard, you're not going to want, if there unfortunately are any overdues, or I'm sorry, meetings that were held late, I should say, you should have a meeting delay reason in there regardless, even if it is 90. Okay, non-participation reasons. How are we doing on time? Okay, good. We're closing out just about the hour. This is what I wanted. Okay, so non-participation reason 11. I was talking about this earlier. This is the one where it says eligible, no education plan, the parents declined FAPE or services. And again, we can only have this after an initial. So if you have a student in your district and they're already on an IEP plan, and out of the blue, they say, hey, we're going to the local private school. No, we don't want an ISP. We're declining FAPE, but we want to keep the eligibility. But they've already started participating. That is cessation of services, or potentially withdrawal if they actually let you know, hey, we're actually stopping the plan. We would never change the inactive reason to be eligible, no plan, parent declined FAPE after they started getting services, because this is basically indicating that services never started. Whereas if they did start and then they stop, that is a SPED exit and we need to report it differently. So if you're finding that, I believe this has been pretty much, I don't find these as often anymore. About 3 years ago, I was finding these more often than not, but I think people are starting to see that. But for anybody who's new, or if you have changeover in staff, just know that this reason, or even this reason 12, eligible no education plan, can never be set once they've started participating. These can only be set after an initial evaluation. That's an important distinction. So we are still calling 12 no education plan other reasons. CalPADS has switched it over to future plan expected. We may or may not change the label. The jury for me is out as to whether this truly covers every scenario. It probably does, but one reason off the bat, you had an initial evaluation at the end of the year, and you thought that the student was going to start participating, and then the family calls up and says, so-and-so got deployed and we're moving to, the next state over and we can't start. So they basically move. So in that case, the other reason would be is because they just happened to move before they could start the plan, not that a future plan was expected. So I understand CalPAD's intent on this, that covers most of them, but I think we may still leave it at other reason, which includes the future plan. Okay, so non-participation reason 21. So this is hopefully now set more in stone that this is only going to be related to initial evaluations where the student is found not eligible from the beginning. That keeps it easier. Max age. Now this one can be set by staff doing an exit summary where they have an exit summary this year and they're putting in a future exit date for later in the fall when they're going to exit. Or if you know this student has reached max age this week and you're exiting them in CalPADS' max age, then go ahead and you can make them inactive in SIRAS. You're going to want to match the date from CalPADS to SIRAS if they're leaving. Although it's possible that maybe there are enrollments that could go past that age of 22 where they're still in general ed, but for special ed, once they're 22, they need to stop. But they can get services even after they're 22. They can just close out the remainder of the year. So for the most part, I believe the CalPADS exit date would match what you have in SIRAS. If you find a situation where you don't think it's appropriate to match the exact same one, that's fine. As long as the max age in SIRAS is relative to the student's birth date, I think we're okay. There may be other, adult ed enrollments that might be happening for the student that happen after. So that's maybe why a date in CalPADS might not match exactly SIRAS. So this 25 reason, return to California, exit out of state. This is the situation where they may or may not have been in your district, but they're eligible and on IEP in California, and then they moved out of state. Hopefully the district that they moved out from reported them correctly, because that's a moved out of state inactive reason where we report them as eligible, not enrolled, which is SWIDS 3. So if they come back to your district and they enroll in general ed and they're still listed as eligible, not enrolled, you're going to get an error, because if the SWID status says they're not enrolled, but now they're enrolled with your district, that's a contradiction. So you're going to need to reach out to the parents to find out, hey, we see your student arrived back in California. As far as California is concerned, still eligible. Are you guys going to participate on the IEP plan that we show you have available? So at that point, we might need to send if they say they're going to participate, well, then we could just, if your district is the one that reported the moved out of state and you have that inactive archive in SIRAS, well, then if you make an active archive as of the district enrollment date, SIRAS knows that they were previously eligible, not enrolled, and it will see that now you have an active status saying that they're eligible and participating. SIRAS will automatically send that SWIDS for you saying that, hey, they're now participating. But if it wasn't your district that reported it, you may need to do something a little different to get that SWID status. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I just thought I would capitalize on the whole concept of students coming from out of state. So let's say that they come from out of state. We know that they're still eligible, not enrolled in CalPADS. And so, but you have to make the determination, are they going to participate with you? And in fact, the parents say, well, actually, the student exited. They're no longer eligible now with us. So if that's the case, then so it doesn't matter if you exited them before. So if you use this inactive reason now, then with one archive, you can tell SIRAS to send a new status of not eligible or no longer eligible over to CalPADS. So that way, when you have the enrollment, CalPADS won't be expecting a plan adoption. Or for you to fix the eligible not enrolled to be eligible and participating, or at least eligible not participating, right? Okay. 26, this is more for your preschool IFSP districts. This is important because for every student who's on IFSP, typically when they have the initial IEP, they'll most likely go to a different district to start preschool and the services. Sometimes the county's going to do the initial Part B to Part C transition. Sometimes the other district will. We have a way where if the record is at the county office or your IFSP, your dedicated IFSP district, and the other district, the elementary district, wants to do the initial, but the IFSP district doesn't want to release the IFSP record to the IEP district until they're 3, that's fine. We just need to have next year's district filled out as the IEP team's district, and then they can do their initial. But let's assume that the student is getting close to 3, and the IFSP team determines that the student's doing very, very well, or the child's doing very well. They're exhibiting age-appropriate behavior, and they feel that whatever was done on the IFSP has addressed the student's needs, and they don't feel that an initial IEP is necessary. Well, then the IFSP team is going to need to make that record inactive in SIRAS as this non-participation or inactive reason, and then archive and report it. That way, when the student arrives at the preschool and enrolls in general ed preschool or even kindergarten later, if they don't go to preschool, once they have that enrollment, CalPADS will know that the student's no longer eligible for SPED services, IFSP or IEP, so they won't get a plan adoption, the SCNR 0606 error. Because the assumption is that if the student is on IFSP and they're not determined no longer eligible, that they don't need an IEP, the CalPADS will assume that there needs to be an initial IEP done, and they want to see some district point that in and actually establish the IEP plan. So the district that enrolls them afterwards will get an SCNR 0606 if they haven't done the initial IEP. And and then back to missing data. So let's say you have a student arrives at your district at preschool, and you already know that they don't need an initial, but you're getting a SCNR 0606. It might be that the previous IFSP district didn't do the exit. Maybe they didn't know they had to, and so then in that solving an error in CalPADS is not about an action doing something, one district getting the error doing something to fix it. It's more another district adding more data to CalPADS to show that nothing actually was wrong in the first place. So the error was more about missing data, not that there was wrong data. Okay, non-participation, how are we doing time? We're right at 4. We'll take a break in just a second here. So non-participation reason 27, this is the new one we talked about. Again, I'll just reiterate at the outset of initial evaluation, parents don't accept the plan. It's going to be really important to remind staff they need to figure out, are the parents just declining the offer of FAPE, or are they actually not consenting to the eligibility? So, and in our Happy Fox documentation on this, we'll have some screenshots of the finalization. So, and I will be going over this in my office hours. So don't worry, I will have some good help sheets available for you to share with your IEP team soon. And we'll actually have FAQs in there as well, so they can find that. So down to the last couple ones here, the non-participation 28, this is the written revocation. I think we're pretty familiar with that. 29, this is the formerly PWN exit to private school, where they are, let's say they're they're enrolled in your district, and then they go to the private school, but they're not going to start on an ISP plan. Well, then you need to make them inactive and say that, hey, they're just stopping services. They're eligible but not participating. And then this is the new one, no longer eligible based on reevaluation. But this also could be no longer eligible based on diploma as well. So, and then that's what we have here to graduate high school. So if anybody was seeing the completers right here, and you're wondering like, why is these two different? Because completers, when you make the inactive a certificate or GED or dropped out, moved, or sadly if they passed away, these are all eligible, not enrolled. I'm thinking this really needs to be not eligible, but technically, yeah, that's a debate I don't want to get into. But basically, this one is once they get a diploma, they're considered no longer eligible and no IEP services. So I'm going to leave it there. We're right at 4 o'clock. We can ask questions or go into a break and come back with questions. I'll leave that up to you, Jennifer. How do you want to approach this right now?